All right, welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 92. We're welcoming back to the show writer-artist Caleb Palmquist. He runs the famed Enkidu Studio, home of Modern Mythology, Small Faber, and Unicorn Vampire Hunter. And he is here to talk to us about his latest Kickstarter for his comic book, Modern Mythology Folklore Retold. A series of myths from around the world retold in modern day. And Caleb, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
And so this is kind of a sequel to your first Modern Mythology, right? Like, in a way.
Yeah, in a way. It's you don't have to have read the first one. It's
Right.
an anthology collection, so it's a bunch of stories from a bunch of different creators, retelling myths from around the world in the modern day. And it's so while we are offering the first one, which was called The Hero's Journey, on the Kickstarter, you don't need to get it, and you don't need to have read it to understand this one.
Right, and I remember you were listening to a previous interview that you're talking about this book. The most exciting thing about this, you are really kind of getting into the whole anthology piece of this, and to kind of recreate. We don't have to kind of go into too much detail about how you got into writing. For people who are interested, check out episode 39. Where Caleb was a guest, and listen to that. If you're listening to this on a podcast, if you're watching this on a video, click up to this button here. I'll just pretend I'm going to do that in post. Click up to this to see his episode where Caleb talks to us about how he got into comic book writing. But so, as we said briefly, you were also the writer of Unicorn Vampire Hunter. You've also done also Small Faber in Modern Mythology. Just briefly, kind of talk to us a bit about for writers themselves, what the difference is between kind of facilitating an anthology as compared to writing your own comic, and what are the pros and cons to both of those?
Well, so with an anthology, I did write or co-write several stories, but most of the work in this book is not mine. I didn't write it. And so it's really, there's a lot more wrangling of people, connecting people together and organizing people. Whereas when I'm writing my own comic book, I'm still working with a team, but it's a much smaller team and it's more focused. So for example, when I'm working on Unicorn Vampire Hunter, I've got Daryl, the artist, Dave, the letterer, and that's pretty much it. I work with editors and proofreaders and stuff like that, but I mean, that's pretty much it. That's the team. Whereas here, every story has its own team. There's 21 stories in the book, and there's a ton of different artists and writers, and so coordinating all of that, and then making sure that the book makes sense together and everything is following the right guidelines, and so it's much administrative. It feels kind of seems silly to say, but it almost feels less creative, at least the part where the actual nuts and bolts of it. Like for me, it's like an administrator versus a writer, because I'm assembling everything and putting everything together, and so it's a lot of work. I like it. It's fun, and I've made a lot of friends and made a lot of connections, and gotten to help facilitate the creation of some really cool comics. But it's definitely more work, more work that's not creative. So if anyone is out there who wants to do an anthology, I would say just stay organized, because when I'm writing a normal comic, I mean, sometimes it's it feels slapdash. Like I'm writing a script, and then I'm just dealing with one artist, and maybe right up until the day that they're drawing a page, I'm making little changes and edits to the script. Whereas with an anthology, I mean, this has been a year and a half process, because you want to have all these deadlines that you put out there so that the thing can get done on time, and there's so many moving pieces. Yep.
So what would you say is as well is, because just kind of doing the math on this thing, you said it's 21 stories. This is bigger than your first one. This one's about around 200 pages, and your first one was around 170.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It's a little bit bigger. So there's a number of reasons for that. One, we got more submissions this time. And that's partly because we had a successful one last time, which was a couple years ago, and so people wanted to be involved. And then I think I've been doing more stuff since then, and so I had a little more pull with some people that I asked to participate. And we actually I wanted to make sure it was as big as the last one. That was my goal when I started out, and then just like there were so many good submissions that I just wanted to include a lot of them, and so we just ended up being bigger, which is cool.
Right. And I think you're saying before, or earlier as well in a previous interview, that you really didn't kind of throw out and kind of do a call to action. It was mostly you just reached out to some of your previous contacts, and then people reached out to you directly, correct?
Yeah, yeah. It was it was it was definitely there were a few places where I posted, saying we were doing this, and some people that I didn't know reached out to me, but definitely is it's like a community building thing, and
Right.
so there were people who reached out to me, and I reached out to people, and but yeah, for sure, we got some returning people from the last book, and then some people who are brand new, but I think all the stories are really cool. I'm super excited about it.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned too is like some people, you got their submissions a year ago. So this has been in the
Oh
planning
yeah.
for a while. And how do you balance with some of those late the people that are just give me another week, just give me another week, and it just kind of seems to have keeps getting further and further on. What are some advice you would give to people who are looking to do this, to say, hey, at what point do you have to cut bait on any of those?
Well, I would say set hard deadlines.
Yeah.
Creatives are always behind. Anyone who's a creative person is always behind schedule, and so I would say give long deadlines.
Right.
Like give people plenty of time, but then when it's time, you got to set hard deadlines. You got to be ready to say like, look, if you don't make this deadline, then we're not going to include you in the story. And
Mm.
that can be hard to do, but if you want to get something made, eventually, things have to get done. I was gonna say you have to be a little flexible, just because you got people who are excited about your project, and so you want to be like, you don't want to be too hard nosed about it, especially if in my case, I'm not Image or Dark Horse or something. I can't be like, look, you'd be lucky to be published in my book. I'd like to think that I'm attracting talented people, um, but you got to be flexible.
You also made sure that ahead of time, did you have like certain specific some contracts written up and everything?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's without getting like too into the nitty gritty of it. There's definitely like, um, uh, yeah, an agreement in place, and everyone ends up signing um, something, and you know, it's um, it's interesting because with a project like this, everyone who's involved is compensated, but they're definitely not compensated to the same level that they would be if they were getting paid a page rate like on a professional comic book, or even in like an independent comic book like I do, because it's like too large of a book. We would need too much money to do that, and so people are
Right.
participating because they're excited about the story. And I think that's like a really unique thing about these indie anthologies, is that you really does get to the core of like, the people who are participating because they're excited about the concept, and they have stories that they want to tell, and they're not here for a paycheck. So that, to me, while I hope that all those people are catch the eyes of people want to hire them, for higher paid work. I think it does speak to the level of passion and excitement that goes into a project like this. You know, so yeah.
Right. And so is there going to be, looking at it, we'll pull it up in a second. I mean, you've already reached your goal. You're already on stretch goals right now. Do you have enough submissions? Are you looking at another another theme for a modern mythology for a third installment now?
I don't know. Not right now. I will say that if someone's listening and they have an idea for a story they want to submit, feel free to contact me. And so if I do a third one, it's not going to be for a while, just because it takes so much work and so much time. And I also don't want to give people the short end of the stick. Like if people are willing to put in the time and the effort to make these like awesome stories, I want to make sure that I do them justice, and that I'm not kind of like writing it off. And so if I do a third one, I'll be fully committed to it. But so because of that, I'm not really ready to dive into it yet. But you never know. I mean, maybe eventually, but yeah, not quite yet, just because I'm kind of like, I'm going to need to, rest to recover from this one.
So no, I'm curious, with my wife, we have 3 kids, but there's also, she talks about this amnesia, by birthing pain amnesia, where like as soon as it happens, like I'm never having another kid again. Did you I don't know, I'm just curious, did you say the same thing a few years ago with Modern Mythology 1? Like I'm gonna do that's be a while, and then you're like, hey, I had a good time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why I kind of have to be like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. It's not going to happen for a while. It's funny though, that happens with every Kickstarter. I mean, now it's at a point where, like this is my 9th Kickstarter, and it's like, and they're getting, to be fair, they are getting easier, but it is always like, oh man, that was so exhausting. Like, right now, as we speak, we're halfway through the Kickstarter, and it's like, now, on this one, we funded on day 1, so it's doing great. I'm less stressed than I normally am because it's like it's doing very well. But it's like, it's still exhausting. It's still like I'm checking it all the time, and I'm like trying to, get the word out. And so every time I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a break for a little while. But then, it's like, then there's going to be something else coming up. And so it's definitely not the most stress-free way to publish a book. But I think it's worth it.
Right. But like you say, it's amazing. Just like, the independent comic community is it's like so large, but so small at the same time. And like the benefit of making, like you said earlier, making these new connections and making these new networking pieces of it. And kind of creating a community and a fan base around something must in a way as well be, kind of fulfilling as well.
People that I worked with on the first Modern Mythology, I went on to work with on larger projects, and the same is true of this one. There are people that I worked with on this Modern Mythology book that I'm already in the process of at various stages of production on new projects, new books that I'm working on, with people that I wouldn't have met otherwise.
So let's jump in, Caleb, and check out your. Just going to go through this Kickstarter. I'm extremely impressed with. As like you said, 230. How does this compare to your previous Kickstarters?
That's a really good question. It's doing better than the previous Modern Mythology did, for sure, and I think it's definitely set to outpace the previous Modern Mythology. It's hard to compare it to my solo stuff, or rather, I should say my series. Like Unicorn Vampire Hunter is like a much smaller price point, so this one has raised more money at this point in the campaign than any campaign I've ever done. But Unicorn Vampire Hunter at this point had more backers. Now,
Okay.
You know, there's different audiences, different people are going to be into different things. You know, not everyone likes anthologies, and so you know, I don't expect to see as many backers as I had on Unicorn Vampire Hunter, but um, it's doing very well. It's doing, all that is to say, I mean, I could get into the nitty gritty of like analyzing the numbers and like where this went, and you know, I'm like way obsessed with it in like to an unhealthy degree. That what I should say is it's doing very well. This one funded faster than anything I've ever done. It funded in 25 hours. I think things are trending up in terms of my Kickstarters. They're getting better and better.
Hmm.
They're funding faster and faster, and that's really exciting.
Is there anything on this particular Kickstarter? Because this is your sixth one that you've done. Is there anything particular here that you saw in previous Kickstarters that worked really well that you just put in there, or is there anything in here that you had in your? Was there anything in your previous Kickstarters that didn't work so well that you just pulled out on this as like pledge levels go, or anything?
Well, so something I'm doing, and I have no idea whether or not this is effective or not, but now the Kickstarter has add-ons available.
Right.
I have really simplified the pledge levels. I used to do Kickstarters that just had like a ton of different complicated pledge levels, but now that they have add-ons officially added in, my pledge levels are very simple, and then people can just add on whatever they want. And I was skeptical about it. I kind of did that a little bit with my unicorn comics, and then on this one I went harder on it. It's like very simple, and then all of the stuff, even like the things that I made specifically for this campaign, you can mostly only get through add-ons. Like they have trading cards and a sticker, and you can only, unless you get the like all-in level, you can only get those by adding them onto your pledge. And a lot of people
Okay.
have. So I think that that is probably the way I'll go in the future.
Hmm.
And then you know, as far as things that I've done before that I keep adding in, um, you know, those little add-on things that honestly, like the things like the trading cards and the stickers, I love them, and so they are popular. People like them, and so you know that's a good motivation for me to keep doing them. But honestly, some of that stuff, I the real reason I do them is because I like them and I want to have them, and like putting them on a Kickstarter and selling them is a good excuse for me to be able to get them. Um, and so it just kind of works out that way. But yeah, and then you know, I think I do a pretty good job of like laying out the graphics of like, here's all the things you can get. Here's exactly what it looks like, so you can visualize it.
Right.
And so yeah, you know, I mean, I feel like I've locked into a routine of how to build a Kickstarter page and what to show on there. And I think I'm leaning more into the concept of, you know, kind of KISS, like keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
You know, not offering too much, not getting too complicated, keeping the page design like simple again.
And so, talking about it from just putting on your design hat for a second here on this. What did you use? What software did you use to put the layout of the anthology?
Oh, well, okay. So in terms of laying out books, I don't do it myself. I used to
Okay.
try to lay out books myself because I thought, like so many people, that I could just do it myself. Like I know how to use a computer. I have an Adobe subscription. Like
Yeah.
I can do everything. And what I learned is that while I can do most things like maybe passably, I can't do very many of them like really well, and at least when it comes to design and stuff. And so I pay a guy named Dave Lentz to do all that stuff for me.
Okay.
And Dave Lentz is a letterer. I think that would be how he would primarily identify himself as a comic book letterer, and he does an amazing job. He lettered several stories in Modern Mythology. He letters all of my Unicorn Vampire Hunter comics, and he does logo design, and then he just does layouts of books. And he is like like, yeah, I'm back on the Kickstarter page, that textbook page example, where it's like in this book, there's like a page before and after each story explaining the I think it's a little further down.
Right here.
There it is. There's a page before and after each story, kind of explaining the origin of the myth, where the myth came from, what kind of culture it's from, and I think that's really cool. We did that in the first book, and we're doing this book as well in this page. And I mean, it just looks so much better than anything I could do. In fact, I designed the page for the first Modern Mythology book, and then he kind of like tried to make it look a little bit better on my like bad design, and it looks okay. But this is so much better, and he just like knows what he's doing. And so,
Right.
if I were to give any advice for anyone trying to do graphic design or lay out a book, I would say just pay someone who's more talented than you, and they'll make it look awesome.
And that was and how did you find him again? Was that through?
So actually, funny story. I met Dave through the first Modern Mythology because everyone's submitting their own stories, and I don't dictate lettering on these books. I mean, I want them to look good, but everyone can bring on their own letterer. And Dave ended up lettering 2 stories in the original Modern Mythology because he knew he was already working for one of the artists who worked on the first book, and so we brought him on to letter it. And then another artist needed a letterer, and so he posted in our private group that we had. And then so Dave did those 2 stories, and then when I needed help laying out the book, I was like, oh well, he's available. And then ever since then, he kind of latched on to me, and I kind of latched on to him, and so I of course, I'm always saying that he's following me around and bothering me for work, but the truth is that I would be completely lost without him at this point. I didn't have like a dedicated letterer design guy before Dave, and I don't know how the hell I was doing anything before that. Because now, I mean, anytime I need anything design-wise, I just like send him an email, and I'm like, can you please do this like by this afternoon, please? And he comes through. It's amazing.
So let's go a bit through like what you can expect in your pledge levels here. So like you said, I love the idea that it's the bulk of it is through add-ons. But you do have the digital edition, and then you have the $35 one, and it's all of them. You kind of go down here. It covers A, B, C, and D.
And my concept for this was that there is no main cover. There were just 4 different covers. So rather than it being like, oh, you can get the main cover or you can get a variant cover, it's like there's 4 covers and you pick which one you'd like the best.
You can kind of see which cover, almost like it's like a poll, like a voting, like which ones that people like the best. Because you have you have the Loki one at 57. You got, so people love the Anubis one. It seems to be the biggest one.
Yep, and that's yep.
And Ibisu,
Ibisu is a Hoyt Silva cover, and Hoyt Silva is really awesome. The list of books like Girl and Last Stop, and he's a good friend of mine. And then that cover D is Abiyoyo, which I think is just so fun. And that one, the last cover D, is a virgin cover. It's a textless cover, which I was a little skeptical about at first, but I think it's really cool. I think it's going to be sort of a cool item.
And you can see right here you have, and then it just goes, and then you just have the whole complete collector's bundle. Just so you said, you keep it, as they say, it's beautifully simple in the fact that you just anything you want is on the add-ons.
I was like, is it going to be like there's going to be overwhelming amount of options, and are people not going to be sure what's available and what's not? But the thing is, it's really easily navigable, and like it seems like people are getting what they want, and like almost everything that I put on the add-ons, I mean everything that I have on an add-on at least has a couple people who wanted it. And so it's like it's cool because then people really get to create the pledge that they want specifically, and they're not having to like figure out which pledge level is right. And I think that's cool, and I like that it's moving in that direction of like being more of an a la carte thing.
Right. and yeah, because it gives people that option, the opportunity to jump in and kind of get either the modern mythology one, get into your unicorn, and get into small favor. I mean, which we talked about last year, I remember. But how did you get Cthulhu Invades Oz? Because that's by Travis Gibb.
Yes, that's not my book, but I did contribute to it. And Travis Gibb wrote a story for Modern Mythology, Folklore Retold, and so he offered to me. He said, we can sell Cthulhu Invades Oz through the Kickstarter, which was really nice of him. And it's a great book. I wrote a story that was drawn by Eric Hawkins, and then I also colored another story in that book, which was kind of a funny thing for me to do, but I had fun doing that. And so I like that book a lot. So when he offered it as an option to add on for this campaign, I was like, yeah, of course, let's do it.
Wow. So you only have 2 stretch goals? Is that what you already have published, or there's more
Well,
that just may pop up?
we've unlocked the first one, which was to add another story, and then we're not quite yet to the second one, but I anticipate that we'll definitely hit the second one, which is to add. Everyone's going to get a set of 3 prints. If they ordered a physical copy, they'll get a set of three prints with their book. And then if we get close to the second stretch goal, we are going to announce the third stretch goal, which I just haven't announced yet. I love announcing. I love putting the stretch goals out there, but I just didn't want to get. I'm not sure. You never really know how far these things are going to go. But I have a very exciting idea for a $15,000 stretch goal. So if we get there,
Okay. Right.
I'll make sure to announce it.
And so, how did you compare this to what? So you had like obviously the theme here was folklore retold. What was when you sent out that call for writers and illustrators? What did you basically, content creators? What was the boundaries that you kind of set up to say, I'm looking for stories that are in this, as compared to your first anthology?
Well, so this one was actually way more open. I'm basically opening it up to being like any myth or folklore or fairy tale or anything along those lines, from some culture around the world, and you're going to retell that story. That's okay, as long as it's a story from a culture somewhere in the world that you're retelling, then it fit. And so we actually came up with the title Folklore Retold after everyone had already submitted their stories. In fact, the title came pretty late.
That's awesome. So you kind of set up like as you say, like a Facebook group or a Discord server or something where people are chatting with each other.
Oh yeah. I usually use Facebook groups for things like this. Just like set up a private Facebook group so everyone chats. Like Discord, I love Discord and I use Discord a lot, but I found that typically Facebook is the platform that most people are on most often, and so it's like tends to be the best communication tool. Now, not everyone is on Facebook. There are a few people who are in this book that I just don't have Facebooks, but there's not. In my experience, there's no one platform that everyone's going to use, and even if I can get someone to sign up, Facebook groups ends up being kind of just the best possible option in terms of it's like got the widest reach. So yeah, that's sort of how I communicate, and I like having a private group because then everyone kind of feels like they're on a team, which they are, and those decisions are. I'm big on being transparent. I mean, not only with my collaborators, but also with like backers and stuff. I mean, if you read through the backer reports, I mean, the backer updates on any of my projects, I'm like very transparent about like, here's this hitch that we had, or this problem, or like, here's thinking, here's my process. Because, if you're willing to jump in a project I'm doing, like on the ground, where you're paying me for it before it's even printed or whatever, then I think I owe it to you.
And do you? And so, and talk to us a bit about like when is this all basically done? Are there still some stories being set up?
Most of the stories are done. There, I want to say, are 3 or 4 stories that are being finished. The stretch goal story wasn't finished when we announced the book, because it was a stretch goal story, and it was like, that was like, you know, a bonus thing. So that artist, Christopher Harris, is finishing that story now that we know that we got the stretch goal and we're going to be doing it. But yeah, the vast majority of the stories are already done and locked in, which is great because that takes a ton of stress off of me.
And so what were some, because they're all, it's not like picking your favorite kids, you know, you don't want to pick, this is my favorite. But instead of asking which one was out of the 21 stories now, because it used to be 20, now it's 21, out of all those stories on there, what was the one that kind of made you say, wow, what a twist, or I didn't realize that, or was there something like, I like what they did on that? Is there any of those that kind of like made you go, it kind of made you smile? I'm like, nice, all right, that was a pretty fun version of that.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good in different ways. They, like, just like the last book, some of them are like pretty straight retellings. Some of them
Right.
have like twists where they change the stories in days. Some of them are very funny. Some of them are very serious. I will say that there's, and the story is called Threads of Things I've Read About,
Okay.
which is, and it's actually a collection of 6 different illustrations, like full page illustrations that are like sort of abstract interpretations of myths involving strings and threads, and it's very cool. It's very like, it's the one that's going to require the most interpretation in terms of like reading those pages before and after, so you like understand like the references that he's making.
Right.
But Noah Meese is like a big mythology and folklore guy, and he knows his stuff. And I think that he did a really beautiful story and a really beautiful interpretation of a lot of different ideas. And so I think that's the most out there one. It's like the least narrative and the most exploratory entry in the book. And I really like it. And then I would say that the story that I think is the most fun is called Beautiful Shoes, which is a Loki and Skadi story. It's a Norse myth about a giantess who comes to Asgard, just like holding court in Asgard. Loki is like running a cafe that's full of hipsters, and all the hipsters are like the various Norse gods, and it's very funny and silly and cute, and I like it a lot. But like you said, you can't pick a favorite child. I mean, this book is full of absolutely delightful stories.
How did you organize the stories? What was the method to that? Almost like it's, if you're, you know, if you're performing like music, you want to have those ebbs and flows, or how did you decide which one goes first, second, third, fourth, and so on?
Well, you know, that's like a little bit of a hard question because I like to make changes up to the last minute. So if I tell you what order they're in, they might be in a different order when it actually gets printed. But the first story in the book is that Beautiful Shoes story, just because I think it's like really emblematic of what kind of a book this is. But you know, try to like, when you get the final book, I think you're going to find that it's I mixed it up, so we get some funny ones and some serious ones and sort of long ones and short ones, and it's really mainly just if it ends up being anything, it's the order I'll put them in is just based on like how I think, you know, it's going to be best read, and how it's going to be most entertaining.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, and I love, like, you're just looking at, so some of these previews that we're looking at now, the art styles are just so different. So you can't really say it's a very specific art style. And And
Nope.
to be clear too, looking at some of the comments and stuff on the page as well, this isn't really all ages, right? This isn't an all ages book.
No, some of the stories I think you could call all ages, but I like this story that you're looking at on the screen right now, Prometheus, is like a bloody, dark story. And then some of them are like cute and silly that you might see on like Cartoon Network. So it's kind of all over the place, but no, I would not call it an all ages book.
Okay.
Nope.
And I think you said, and you did say in your you did say in the campaign too, is like who would love this? You know, you're talking about, you know, fans and readers of mythology, you know, people who like those, you know, retelling of classic tales, people who like good art, people who like anthology books. So yeah, I mean, and obviously you're hitting something with so many, you know, so many backers so far, and you're only halfway through and you already got like over 230 backers.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think that it's you know, it's connecting with people, and I think that, you know, I knew going into it that not everyone likes anthologies. I knew that, you know, compared to Unicorn Vampire Hunter is like a more classic comic book. And people have even reached out and said, you know, I love all your stuff. I don't like anthologies though, so I'm not going to back this one. And I'm like, that's fair. That's okay. Um, you know, but enough people are into it, and I think it's really cool because it's something different, and it's something that allows, you know, a lot of different people to get their work out there, and if you pick up this book, you're going to see a lot of different styles, and hopefully, my biggest hope with these kinds of books is that if you buy this book, you discover a new favorite artist or a new favorite writer in there, and then you end up going and following their other stuff. That's really my hope.
Right. Well, that's true too, because you say some people aren't fans of anthology, but then you have some people who are solely look for anthologies because they like those books, they like those one-off stories, and it does give people a benefit of that. Now, remind me as well, do you get this printed from the same place you get your other works printed?
Currently, my plan is to print the book with the same printer that I printed Unicorn Vampire Hunter with. And because I found a printer that I really enjoy, that does good work and is very communicative, and you know, that's hard to find. I have been through a lot of printers, and you know, finding one that's going to be responsive and really cares about making the product good and can get it to you fast, and is domestic. That's another thing, is that I now am very set on using a domestic printer just because of all of the issues with international shipping and everything that's going on in the world. It makes it really difficult. Something overseas, you never know what's going to happen with customs and all this other stuff and shipping containers, and you know, maybe my books are stuck on a ship that's blocking the friggin' Panama Canal or whatever. You know, who knows? And so I like to go domestic, and yeah, we'll be using the same printer. So I'm very optimistic, and I trust that the books are going to turn out really well.
Right. Yeah. And would that, you consider that also a selling point too, when you put that in the Kickstarter, saying that, you know, everything where our products are printed, you know, in the United States or anything like that, or?
I don't know. You know, that's a good question. For me, it's a selling point on the fact that the books are going to get out faster. Right. In this case, like I said, we are delaying the production by about a month because of a story finishing, but I can get my books out fast. The printer that I use has like a 2-week turnaround from the time I order them and approve the print to the time that they arrive on my doorstep, which is amazing. I mean, if I was printing overseas, it would be months, not weeks. And so I think is a selling point because I can get you your books faster. When I did the last Unicorn Vampire Hunter, I mean, it was fast. Like, people were surprised at how quickly they got their books, after backing it.
Right. Oh. Well, this is exciting stuff. I'm excited. I'm excited for you, Caleb, that you're for this.
Thank you.
Excited to check out all these stories. I mean, it's hefty, like 21 stories over about 200 pages, and the amount that you're asking for a color 200-page anthology book, $35 is a great deal. You can't beat that.
I will say that you're getting a way better value per page on this book than you get on my shorter comics, and part of that is I'm able to get a little bit of a better value printing bigger book, like per page, obviously. Whereas when you print something that's shorter and it's indie and it's small press run, short, like, what am I trying to say? Print on demand, it tends to be more expensive. But yeah, I would say people are definitely getting good value with this book. It's a lot of stories.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great deal. And so, yeah, and like I said, congratulations. This is exciting stuff.
Thank you.
And so next, Caleb, when you're on your next Kickstarter, you've done 6 so far. Let's get you on here for a third time.
Oh, absolutely. No, I feel bad that I didn't come on for Unicorn Vampire Hunter 2. And like I was saying to you before we started recording, I just completely spaced on that campaign. I forgot the podcasts were a thing. I was so focused on getting the Kickstarter running that I forgot to do any appearances. And so for the third one, I'll definitely hit you up, and that's going to be coming before the end of the year for sure. We're going to be running the campaign for Unicorn Vampire Hunter 3.
Excellent. Yeah, and then when we'll talk, I'll probably have my Modern Mythology, my book behind me as we're chatting. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Caleb, and like I said, congratulations again on your successful Kickstarter.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on again.
You're welcome. So you're like in Seattle, right? Is that where you're?
No, I'm in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, okay. All right. Say I got the state right at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad. And you, yeah. So have you seen any of your books in Barnes and Noble? You don't have any of your books in there yet?
Oh no, I don't have any of my books in Barnes and Noble. I'm hopefully someday, but
okay.
Not yet. Yeah.
They have no idea that they have like a Kickstarter famous indie creator in their midst right now.
They do not. No.